Hello everyone! Today we're finally taking a look at the mod Moulder's Menagerie by ChaosRobie, which adds some of the most insane Moulder monsters, including the one unit that is on the absolute top of my wishlist for units to be added to the base game. So get yourself a steaming bowl of warpstone and let's take a look at some Skaven monsters. So let's start small with giant rats, which sounds big, but they're just big for a rat. And they're very squishy expendable rats that I don't even think would beat an archer unit, so they aren't really used to kill stuff. They might be able to occupy some archers, at least as a distraction, while you kill the rest of their units, but unless you're desperately broke, wolf rats are just better. And next we got the Aberration, which seems like what happens when creating a Rat Ogre goes wrong, because they are the top half of a Rat Ogre, which arguably is the best part, and they are really squishy, but man do they pack a punch. They do incredible damage against infantry, they're unbreakable and they rampage, so once you send them into an enemy unit, they will murder until either they or the enemy is dead. So don't expect to keep them after a battle. And next up, we can actually see what it looks like if you manage to create a whole Rat Ogre and slap some armor plates on them with the armored Rat Ogre. And they are Rat Ogres with some extra armor. They're a bit slower thanks to the extra weight, but it's worth it to make them a little bit less squishy. And next we got the Burrowing behemoth, who is definitely the frontrunner of the ugliest thing in the mod. Or at least tied with the next unit, if you could believe that. But it's kind of awesome. It's sort of a variant on the Brood Horror. It's not as fast, but it doesn't need to be because it burrows. So if you need to take out a bunch of archers or artillery, you don't have to bother flanking around and avoid things, you can just burrow over and start murdering. Because it's got a range of 500 meters, which is probably a bit overkill, because at that point it might as well be a map-wide teleport. Because that's more range than any artillery unit in the game. And next is the Chimaerat, which is some kind of rat hydra, and I can't decide if this thing or the Burrowing behemoth is uglier, so I guess you decide. But it's a hydra, it's got hydra stats, regen, a breath attack, and an extra heal if it goes below 50%, so it does hydra things, it's just very ugly while doing it. And finally, the big reason I made this video, we got my favorite unit that I really want in the base game, the coolest unit in the Warhammer universe, the Stormfiends. And they are the perfect mix of Moulder and Scryer, because they are the biggest and baddest Rat Ogres that they strapped all kinds of Scryer weapons to, and there are so many flavors of Stormfiends that they can be and do whatever you need them to, and they can smush or melt whatever you want to be smushed or melted. There's the Shock Gauntlets, that is anti-large, because they have an on-contact effect that removes 16 anti-large from whatever they're fighting. And they do some damage AoE around them while fighting, so send them to smush those pesky halberds. There's the Grinder Fist, they got the Warp Grinder Seismic Snare ability that snares units around them, and Wall Breakers, so they're excellent for sieges. So not even walls can stop these guys. There's the Warp Braziers that spread war fumes while fighting, which does a lot of damage over time and lowers leadership to whatever they're fighting, so punish your enemies for breathing. And there's the Doomflayer Gauntlets that does extra damage against infantry, and while it's in melee, it has an extra 24 armor, so they are incredibly tanky. But that's just the melee Stormfiends. There's also Stormfiends with rattling guns instead of hands, which does insane amount of damage, so you just line them up against a large target and watch it get reduced to a fine red mist within seconds. They aren't very accurate, but if the target is large enough, then that's not a problem. There are Stormfiends with Warp Fire Throwers, and there are few things in the world of Warhammer that can melt infantry as fast as Warp Fire Throwers. So you line them up next to a blob of infantry and turn that blob into a puddle. And there's also Stormfiends with mortars as arms that shoot poison wind shells that does great splash damage, and what doesn't die from the explosions are likely to die to the damage over time afterwards. And I don't think that any of these Stormfiends can actually outdo the normal weapon teams, like Rattling Gunners in sheer firepower, but since they're attached to big bulky murder machines that can murder just fine in melee, you don't have to protect them, and they can even sit on the front line and shoot until the armies clash if you want to. There's also special Stormfiend units from Ikit's lab with Rattling Gun, Warfire Thrower and the Doomflayer Gauntlet variants that you can unlock by buffing Stormfiends in the workshop, but they're pretty much the same as the base version, but with slightly better stats. But that's all the units, and I realize I'm a bit late with this video, considering that the mod is about a year and a half old by now, but better late than never I suppose. So I'm gonna go play with my Stormfiends now, so thanks so much for watching. If you liked the video, do the YouTube things for more, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!